Everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
All right. I would like to call to order the June 25th, 2024 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Georgette, one, please call the roll.
Morning.
Good morning,
Director
everyone.
Roberto Requejo.
Present.
Director Jakes.
Here.
Chairman Barclay.
Here.
Director Ortiz. Here.
Chair recognizes Director Ortiz.
Thank you. I move that Director Michelle Lee be allowed to participate in the meeting remotely due to the factor brought on by the severe weather and its impact on her mobility that prevent her from being participant in person in today's meeting.
I second the motion.
It's been properly moved and seconded that Director Michelle Lee be allowed to participate in the meeting remotely. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Roberto Requejo.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
The motion passes. Can you please admit Director Lee, Isaiah? Thank you. Director Lee, can you hear us?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hi.
Welcome.
Director Ortiz.
Thank you. I move that the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting recess for 15 minutes for the purpose of the regular Transit Board meeting coming to order to address the appointment of Director Edie.
Second that motion.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee meeting be in recess for 15 minutes for the purposes of the regular board meeting of the Chicago Transit Authority coming to order to address the appointment of Director Edie. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Roberto Requejo.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes.
Oh, well, we're motion to recess.
The motion passes. The meeting stands in recess. Chairman Barclay.
I would like to call to order the meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for June 25, 2024. Georgette, please call the roll.
Director Roberto Requejo.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chair recognizes Director Ortiz.
Thank you. Chairman Barclay, I move that Director Michelle Lee be allowed to participate in the meeting remotely due to the factors brought on by the severe weather and its impact on her mobility that prevent her from participating in person.
I second the motion.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Requejo, that Director Michelle Lee be permitted to participate in the meeting remotely. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Lee, welcome.
Hello.
Before we proceed to board business, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and welcome a new member to the board. Reverend Michael Edie, who was appointed by Mayor Johnson. Director Edie has extensive community development and outreach experience as a senior pastor of People's Church of the Harvest, Church of God in Christ, where he's implemented community resources and programming to underserved individuals and families on Chicago's West Side. Examples of those resources and programming are children's services, housing assistance, substance abuse prevention, anti-violence initiatives, senior services, and youth employment. In addition to his community leadership through his church, Director Edie is president of the People's Community Development Association of Chicago, a job training and placement organization and affordable housing developer that has invested over $40 million of development into the East Garfield Park community. Prior to the appointment to the CTA board, he was a member of the Chicago Police Board. On behalf of the board, we want to welcome you, Director Edie, and we look forward to working with you. Director Edie, please.
Chairman, did you want to move him to put him on the board?
Yes.
Okay, can we do that,
Okay, that's fine.
please?
At this point, we like to entertain a motion for
Chairman Barclay, the board has an ordinance to approve fixing the salary of Michael Eady as a member of the Chicago Transit Board and appointing him to the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee.
Do we have a motion to approve the ordinance?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the motion to approve the ordinance fixing the salary of Michael Eady as a member of the Chicago Transit Board and appointing him to the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee, that action take place. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay, the motion passes.
Now, Director Eady, you may join us. I'd like for you to make a few comments this morning to the board and to the audience.
Good, good. Well, thank you very much, Chairman Barclay. And certainly I count this a great privilege and opportunity to be able to serve the city of my nativity and this very significant role. Certainly want to thank Mayor Johnson for his confidence to allow me this opportunity. And I look forward to working with this team.
Thank you. Any other comments from any other board members?
Welcome.
Thank you.
I've had the pleasure of working with him for a long time. You know, us young guys stand on his shoulder. You know, so welcome, Director Eady.
Chairman Barclay, the board also has an ordinance to approve a resolution changing the date of the June 2024 Chicago Transit Board regular meeting.
We have a motion to approve the ordinance.
I move that we approve the resolution changing the date of the June 2024 Chicago Transit Board regular meeting.
Second the motion?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the June 2024 regular board meeting resolution be adopted. We will take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion to approve the resolution, adopt the resolution passes.
Chairman Barclay, I move that we recess the Chicago Transit Board regular meeting until called to order by the chair following the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the Chicago Transit Board regular meeting be stand in recess until the conclusion of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion passes.
At this point, the meeting stands in recess until the conclusion of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget.
So may I have a motion to reconvene the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee meeting?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting reconvene. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of May 8th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee meeting minutes of May 8th, 2024 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
I abstain.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now move on to agenda item number 5.
Our next order of business is the finance report. Jeremy Fine.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'll present the results for the April and year-to-date numbers.
Jeremy, are you loading your report or is
I
Isaiah?
thought they were going to do it, but
Thank you, Isaiah.
thank you. On the next page, you see the results for April revenues. You see farebox and pass totals coming in aggregate positive to budget by about $600,000. We see farebox down to budget slightly, but passes exceeding budgeted expectations. And this is indicative of the larger innovation of people back to the office, as well as people switching from paper use to passes. So overall, we're exceeding budgeted expectations by about $600,000 for the month. Reduced fare subsidy coming in as expected, and non-fare box totals coming in better than budgeted expectations by about $400,000. So overall, for the month of April, we're positive to budget by about $1 million and over $4 million better than April of 2023. On the next page, you see the year-to-date numbers. Again, following a similar type form, farebox a little bit below, but passes better than budgeted expectations. So in aggregate, we're positive to budget by about $1.4 million for the first 4 months of the year. Reduced fare subsidy coming in as expected. Non-farebox totals about $2 million better than budgeted expectations. So overall, for the first 4 months of the year, here we see total revenues coming in about $3.4 million better than expected, and almost $9.5 million, 9.4 better than 2023 year-to-date numbers. On the next page, you see our expenses. You see labor coming in favorable to budget by about $5 million. This continues to be favorable, but is coming down as our hiring efforts continue to ramp up. Materials are essentially flat, slightly negative, but this is more of a timing issue. Fuel and power continue to be positive for us. Provisions for injuries and damages is coming in as expected. The purchase of security services is negative, but as we talked about at the last board meeting, we expect this to be negative through the remaining portion of the year on a monthly basis. And we expected it to be about 2 to 2.5 million negative per month, and we're at about 2.3. So it's kind of within that readjusted expectation for the month. Other expenses is coming in positive to budget by about $5.4 million. So overall, for the month, we see a favorability to budgeted expectations of about $8.8 million. On the next page, you see the same for the first 4 months of the year. You see here labor continuing to be positive, materials essentially flat, fuel and power strong performers for us. Security services is negative to budget as we discussed, and other expenses positive. So overall, for the first part of the year here, we're positive by about $34.7 million on our expenses. So again, good results there with regard to our aggregate expenses. On the next page, you see our public funding. For the month, sales tax is positive by about $1.3 million. PTF is positive by about 1.3. Real estate transfer tax, as interest rates have gone up, that's had a dampening effect on real estate sales. That's negative by about $2 million. And PTF on rent is slightly positive. That's more of a timing issue. But overall, for the month, our collections are about $700,000 better than budgeted expectations. On the next page, you see the year-to-date numbers. Again, following a somewhat similar form, sales tax and PTF positive, while the real estate transfer tax and PTF on rent is negative. You see in aggregate the outperformance to budget by about $2.4 million. And again, it's important to note that that's only counting 2 months of sales tax collections, while we're counting 4 or 5 months of collections for the other revenues. On the next page, you see our federal funding draws for the month. We're drawing down about $38 million. In aggregate, we've now drawn down about 58.5% of the total allocation. This means that we have a little over $900 million remaining, about $915 million. Based on our current projections, we assume that those funds will last us through 2025 into the early days of 26. We'll obviously continue to keep the board apprised as to changes on those expectations. But again, we do have quite a bit of funding remaining, but this obviously does not absolve the efforts to get additional funding to address the fiscal cliff that is facing us in 2026 and beyond. On the next page, you see the three commodities that we purchase: fuel, power, and natural gas. We're where we need to be locked in for fuel and natural gas for the next several years. For power, we're locked in. We're where we need to be in the short term, we're in the process of looking to procure additional services in the outer years of 25 and beyond for power. But again, we'll look for selective opportunities across all three commodities, but this strategy's worked out very well for us. That concludes my report for April. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Jeremy, thank you. A couple of things. Let's start with power since we're up there. Because if I remember correctly, there's been we've pressed pause on electric buses, not because of anything but because of the distributor. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. Sorry. I don't know if pause is the correct word, but we are continuing to receive delivery of our electric buses pursuant to our contracts. And in fact, I believe on the agenda is a assignment of the contract from Proterra to Phoenix Motors, who basically purchased the company that basically we were buying our buses from. There's a bigger issue industry-wide about the overall capacity for the bus manufacturing industry to basically meet the demands in the United States for buses. That's the issue that we're trying to basically work to get more needs coming to the market. It may impact our or what that may look like or how it may impact what we ultimately need to do.
Okay. So does that give us an opportunity to kind of, when it comes down to power, to shop a little bit longer, since we are not getting the buses as fast as, because this is going into 20 what?
The conversion of our fleet is planned to be done by 2030. I think that's a different conversation from what Jeremy does in terms of our power. To clarify, there is an electric power issue that we have to deal with as we convert more of our garages to support electric buses. And that's an issue that we have to work through with ComEd, who's the distributor of the power. But what Jeremy basically is dealing with is really not the distribution network, but the sources of the power that come through that network that we get a significant break on. ComEd is the distributor no matter what, but where you get your power from is what Jeremy's able to shop in his financial dealings to get us the best deal for that source of power that ultimately comes back to us.
And we still need a tremendous amount of power because of the rail system. Our annual budget for electricity is about $50 million, even before the novation to electric buses. So, we use obviously a tremendous amount of power for traction, but also for facilities as well. So, continue to buy electricity. To your point, we'll continue to ramp that up through our budgeted expectations over the next years as we complete that novation to the electric bus platform. But we still need to novate to through the RFP process to a new provider, as President Carter indicated.
Sure. Thank you to both of you. So let me go now to you said we've drawn 915 billion, or do we have 915 remaining?
We have $915 million remaining. And based on current projections, we expect that to last us through 2025 into the early days of 26. We were originally awarded about 2.2 billion. So it's a little over 40% left.
And will any of this be able to kind of help balance the cliff in 2026?
So right now, we believe that the remaining money will be available to balance any kind of deficits that we have in 24, in 25, and then a small portion of 26's expected, budget gap would be covered by the remaining federal emergency relief funds. Obviously, this is all very dynamic, but we do need to have additional funding in place. And this is the conversations that we're having with the state and the other service boards and the RTA to secure additional funding to help close those gaps in 26 and beyond because of the fact that that's just a one-time, infusion of funds from the federal government with those emergency relief dollars. So we do need to have that bridge built, by 26 or before to have those funds available for the 26 budget.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind is that even though Jeremy's talking about 2026, we actually develop our 2026 budget in 2025.
Right.
So the implications of what that budget's going to look like really start to come into focus in the fall of next year, which is why we're really targeting getting this issue resolved before we have to begin that process, because otherwise we'll be having a very difficult budget conversation because of the practical realities of what will require statutory to present as a balanced budget by RTA and the elimination fact that we're going to run out of additional funds that we have.
And while it comes into full focus in 25, it will be part of the conversation in the 2025 budget later this year. Because of the fact that the 25 budget will include projections for 26 and 27, as our budgets always do. So it will be part of the conversation will be how are you closing those projection years, with potential additional funding from the state or other mechanisms.
Is there conversation being had as it relates to there may be a changing of the guards in November or January of next year? And what that may mean for DC and disbursements of money to transit agencies?
I think everybody is watching the election situation at the federal level. While that doesn't necessarily impact our operating challenge, it obviously could have a really big impact on our capital.
Right.
And so, we have an administration that right now is very favorable to public transportation. We have on the capital side towards public transportation. There are obviously a number of discretionary grants that we're pursuing, not the least of which is the Red Line extension to fund that project, which we are diligently working to bring to closure before the end of this year. So that will not be an issue. But certainly it is a focus of my attention to make sure that we are as best positioned as possible to deal with whatever may happen with a change of administration, if that were to occur at the beginning of next year.
Because pre-Reagan era, large transit agencies like CTA did receive federal operating funding. So it's been several decades since we have, other than the federal emergency relief funding. That's something that we have had discussions about and would like to see reinstated. Obviously, the stars would have to align a certain way in DC for that to happen, but that's something that continues to be on the table.
And then my last question, Jeremy, is I know we've always been in a deficit with security for obvious reasons. Are we sharing any expenses with CPD, or is this simply CTA monitoring its systems doing what we need to do and independent of CPD? Or do they have any skin in the game?
So, glad to call Nancy Ellen Usman to talk about kind of the involvement of CPD in the process here.
I think if Nancy Ellen comes up, the short answer to your question is both. There's money that we're obviously spending directly to support and fund our operations. There's also the Voluntary Special Employment Program, which is a program that we fund to bring additional police officers on a volunteer basis out of CTA. Separate apart from that, though, the CPD has a mass transit unit
Right.
dedicated unit of police officers for public transportation that is paid for out of their budget. So there's both what we do, there's both what they do, and then there's this piece in the middle that's sort of a combination of our supporting their efforts by providing more subsidy to the police department itself. I don't know, Nancy, if there's any more you would add to that.
So Nancy Usman, Chief Safety and Security Officer, CTA. So as Yorville mentioned, the voluntary special employment program, we raised the rate in, I think it was the fall of 22 from straight time to time and a half. And as a result, we saw more police officers volunteering. So we have a budget for that. We originally weren't seeing that money being utilized. It is now significantly more utilized. We're still, I don't think, using all of it. I would imagine, when incidents happen, like all leave is canceled for the police force. So I would imagine like around the DNC, although they're going to be providing support to us, I would not see any officers volunteering to take shifts that we would pay for. So because we rely on them and their decision-making, if there are periods of time when leave is canceled, then we're not going to get the volunteers. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. And I don't remember if it was early part of the year of last year, there was a grant or something that.
So those are security grants. Those are targeted specifically for terrorist activities, and that's a pass-through. So the federal government, we apply on behalf of CPD because they're not an eligible recipient, but that money gets passed straight through to them, and that is just targeted for terrorist activities. So, some of the bomb sniffing dogs, stuff like that. It's not like a general operating fund that they use. It's really targeted for anti-terrorist activities.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yep.
No further questions.
We will take questions from the rest of the members of the board. Director Requejo.
No questions.
Chairman Barclay.
No questions.
Director Ortiz.
No question.
Director Eady.
No questions.
Director Lee.
Thank you, Jeremy. No questions.
There are no further questions. Director Jakes.
Our next order of business is independent auditors report for fiscal year 2023. Jeremy.
Thank you. I'll call up here the representatives from Crow and Adelphia, our auditors, and appreciate kind of the continued effort and teamwork that our team here at CTA has had in the collaboration with the auditors here from both Crow and the WMBE firm Adelphia that participates in our annual audit. So Christine and Anna are here. So if you want to introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I am Christine Torres, a partner here with Crow, and here with Anna Austin from our DBE firm, Adelphia. And we're here to present on the CTA financial statements for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2023. So we were engaged to audit the financial statements to determine that they're reasonably stated in all material aspects, as well as to audit the federal grant funds in accordance with the guidelines set out by the federal regulations for compliance with laws and regulations throughout the fiscal year. In regards to the financial statement audit, I am happy to say it has been completed and the auditor's opinion has been issued. The audit opinion was unmodified or a clean audit opinion, which means that the amounts presented within the financial statements and the notes to the financial statements are reasonably stated in all material respects. As required by government auditing standards, we also look at the internal controls of financial reporting to determine if there are any items required to be identified and reported under these standards. I'm happy to say we did not find any findings to report under government auditing standards, so there were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies. Anna's going to provide the update on the federal portion of the audit.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Usman, and I'm a partner from Adelphia LLC, and I am representing the DBE subcontractor for this audit engagement. I'm pleased to report that Crow was able to issue an unmodified opinion on the compliance with federal programs for the year ended December 31st, 2023. So CTA receives a number of numerous federal grant programs, and based on the federal guidelines, we determined that the major program tested this year is the federal transit cluster. And because of the size of the federal transit cluster, we were able to obtain 98% coverage of federal programs spent. And also part of the audit process is that we look at the internal controls over the compliance. And based on our testing, I'm happy to report that there were.
This is a really brief summary of both our federal and financial procedures for the audit. We would like to thank the entire finance department for working with us in a professional manner, providing all of the information quickly and timely, to be able to be here to issue the audit opinions within the timeframes required by multiple different agencies. So I'll stop here to see if there's any questions from the committee.
No, thank you for what you do, and thank you, Jeremy, for you and your team to make sure that we're all thumbs up as we move forward. So thank you.
And they make it look very easy. You have a very complicated financial structure.
Yeah.
You have numerous grants,
Yeah.
very complicated stuff, but having the right people, the process and controls in place make this look a lot easier than it really is. And the unmodified opinion is a very high bar to clear. But again, it's really due to the team.
So you're saying we need to make it harder next year?
I think congratulations to the plate. Thank you. You do make it seem easy, but I understand all the background and all the coordination that happen across everyone, both sides, and the entire team's behind you. So thank you.
Likewise, I would join in. I know we met yesterday with the audit team and Chairman Jakes, and they broke it down for us, all the work that they did, but your team did an excellent job making it a little bit easier for them. So we very much appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Are there any other comments or questions from other members of the board? Director Requejo?
No question. Congrats.
Director Eady?
No questions, but want to commend you for the good work you done.
Director Lee?
No questions. Thank you, team. And this is a testament to your leadership, Jeremy. So nice work.
Thank you.
There are no further questions. Director Jakes, you may proceed to agenda item number 7.
Item number 7 is review of an ordinance amending Ordinance 023-131, approving the fiscal years 2024 through 2028 capital improvement program. Jeremy Fine and that's
Jeff.
Michelle here.
Jeff Overcast. Yeah.
And this is Jeff.
Jeff,
Hey, Jeff.
good morning.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jeff Overcash. I'm the Vice President of Finance and Capital for CTA. Today, I'm here to present an amendment to the current 2024 to 2028 Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. The current program of $4.1 billion has already been previously approved by the board, and we are proposing an amendment to increase this by $117 million. This $117 million can be broken up into 5 separate asks. First is a slight reduction of $1.5 million to true up the difference between the RTA federal final allocation of formula funds and our initial estimate, which was slightly different. Second is to include an award of $111 million from the United States Department of Transportation for the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods program. These funds will be used for track improvements on the Blue Line between Kedzie Avenue and Pulaski. Next is an addition of $1.5 million award, also from the U.S. Department of Transportation, for strengthening mobility and revolutionary transportation, which we are using for CTA's bus jump signal pilot project. The fourth is City of Chicago zoning bonus contribution funds of $1 million, which will be used to provide track improvements from the northbound track running along the Roosevelt Station. And the last request is to include CTA bond interest and salvage funds of $5 million, which are now available for us to use to fund 2 critical projects. First is CTA's share of the budget to advance the regional I-290 Blue Line Corridor Program Management Office, where CTA will partner with CMAP and IDOT to provide technical support for project planning, financing, coordination, and public engagement. And then the second is to replace our outdated transit security police vehicles. The total increase of all these is 117 million. It'll bring our 2024 to 2028 CIP to just under 4.19 billion. Be happy to answer any questions if I can.
So does any of this include any restoration or work being done on the red line on the south side?
Not these adjustments, the amendment doesn't include any of that at this point.
Is there something somewhere where that's built in?
Yes, yeah, this is just kind of
This is-
moving
yeah.
some funding around based on what we're getting, what we're reprogramming. So this is just an adjustment. We do these usually several times a year based on kind of adjustments that need to be made. But with regard to larger programs, whether it be red line extension or any other kind of large capital program, that's done as part of like the larger annual budget process. And, from time to time, we do include those types of projects in here if funding is being reallocated to those projects as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take other questions from, sorry.
Out in our capital budget, allocated for the red.
Absolutely.
Rehab work, which.
Right, and particularly, Mr. President, from Chinatown to 95th.
Yes. Yeah, well, remember that portion of the red line actually got rebuilt in our history fairly recently. It's not suggesting it happened recently, but certainly there's ongoing maintenance that we track of facilities that we identify for these private parking.
Yep, absolutely.
Director Requejo.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, first of all, congratulations on the Reconnecting Communities grant. This is really exciting. That portion of the blue line going to the west side, as you all know, is a source of a lot of frustration. Riders, could you let us know what the timeline is for deployment of these funds and what are some of the improvements that the riders are going to see as a result?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yes. Can I get back with you on that information specifically? And
We'll circle back.
Let me add some context to that. The Reconnecting Communities grant is obviously really focused more on the public engagement and interface side of what is a much bigger project for which the funding is still being aligned to basically pay for the reconstruction of the I-290 corridor. We have been working with the state to really see how, along with that project, we can also do the rehab of the Forest Park branch and Blue Line. As you know, that is the last branch of my entire system that has not gone through any sort of major rebuild since it opened. It is now the priority to identify the funding for that, but it's also a multi-billion-dollar project. So we do not have the funding identified for that today. There are some grants we've applied for in partnership with the state, which is part of what this program is. And we've now entered into a new partnership with CMAP to really help sort of be the program manager over the complexity of all of it. Part of what they're going to fund. But there is still the work to be put into place to actually fund the actual project itself. In fact, one of the conversations that I had with the Federal Transit Administration when I was in DC just a few weeks ago was around the policies that are driving the decision making for some of the discretionary grants that I think in some ways unfairly penalizes public transportation. In an administration that has shown tremendous support for public transportation in general, what I call the law of unintended consequences. And there was favorable reaction to that. So I'm optimistic that we're going to find the funding for it. There are a number of programs that can support this type of project, but it has not been locked into place yet. Once that is done, then the timeline that you're asking for that would lay out sort of the timing for when we would be able to move forward with all this would be a part of that bigger conversation, along with the other work that's going to be done in that corridor.
Thank you. Thank you for the context. And I think as we wait for that funding, it will be helpful to learn more about what this program can do and communicate also to riders that helps on the way and they have some improvements coming. The other question is around the zoning bonus contribution funds. This seems to be a program that we have in partnership with the City of Chicago. I'm assuming Department of Planning and Development is involved here. How can we double down on this contribution? I think it's great to get $1 million, but is there an opportunity to get more from developers building downtown and other areas to invest in the system.
Yeah, we'll continue to look at opportunities to expand that. We can get more information to you on that as well.
You're right. It is a great program that basically provides additional funding resources to public transportation. We obviously work very closely with DPD in terms of identifying opportunity for that. We need to continue to press the city to create more opportunities that can bring more of these types of funds to us as part of the overall development opportunities that are happening within this area. As you know, it's a very innovative program that was really targeting the impacts of certain development and the challenges it creates for public transportation to be provided. I think it's maybe one of the few in the country that actually took that on. We can get to some historical numbers on how much money we've gotten under the program to date, but I agree with you that there's still opportunities to continue to amplify that. And certainly working closely with the mayor's office and with CPD, we'll find more ways to do that.
Thank you. The amounts of investment taking place in Chicago, especially around here in the West Loop, are in the billions. So this is great, but it seems like there is more than they could do for us. So let us know how we can be helpful in those conversations to make the most of that revenue.
Yeah, I would echo that because as much as they rely upon mass transportation in their plans, in their development plans, they're not very generous to the church. I think we should press them additional funding in light of the fact that a lot of their plans are developed around mass transportation.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Chairman, as you know, one of the things that we are focused on as part of the broader conversation down in Springfield is getting more authority and more tools that will allow us to pursue these types of options directly. I think it is part of a broader strategy and opportunity that we have that is not unlike what you see a lot of top transit systems around the world pursue, where they are much more aggressive in the real estate development market than we are able to do because of the legal restrictions that are placed on us in terms of what we can do and how we can pursue that. You know as well as I do that there is so much property around our system that's connected to our system, particularly on the west side, excuse me, on the south side of the city, that we would love to be able to find ways to leverage that in a way that not only provides additional community benefits, but also provides additional revenue streams for CTA that help us deal with the bigger financial challenges that we face as we move forward. I kind of think that's a new type of business model that could work for CTA and give us some of the financial independence that we really need in order to be able to continue to grow the system and provide the services that we'd like to see provided to our customers.
Yes, I mean, I've had some discussions with Chairman Dillon around this area, and it's just a matter of getting some legislation in place.
Yep.
Yeah, you see some very good examples of that worldwide, whether it be Hong Kong or others.
I'm in full agreement on everything that's been said. In addition, not to make things more complicated, but I do hope that as we think about legislation and as we think about additional funds, that we think through that equitably across our city, because we know development in certain areas is much harder to happen. So as we think through that, it would be helpful to also add a lens of equity as we think about these policies. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
That's right.
Director Eady?
Yes, I concur with what has been said, especially in light of the last statement, equity in light of what these communities can be benefited by. So certainly that needs to be taken into consideration.
Director Lee?
No further comments. Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further comments. We may proceed to agenda item number 8.
Well, actually, man, I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director E?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Motion passes. Isaiah, can we please see Director Lee on the screen? Thank you.
I'm having some
Chairman.
connectivity issues, so sorry about that, y'all. Working through.
Director, may proceed to agenda item number 8.
Agenda item 8 is review of an ordinance authorizing amendments to electricity contracts with Energy Services, LLC, and MP2 Energy, NE LLC, to extend the contracts for 1 year. Jeremy, Jeff?
Thank you, and good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer. Today, I present for your consideration an ordinance authorizing a 1-year extension of the electricity supply contracts with CTA's current providers, MP2 and Dynegy Energy Services, LLC. In January of 2024, the board approved an ordinance authorizing the CFO to enter into a new contract for purchasing power with a responsible third-party electricity supplier. As such, CTA issued an RFP, a request for proposal, to identify new electricity suppliers to fulfill the authority's electricity needs starting in 2025. However, due to circumstances outside of CTA's control, staff is unable to complete the RFP process before the expiration of the current contracts. The previously approved ordinance authorizing CTA to enter into new contracts will remain in effect, but the term will commence in 2026 rather than 2025. And I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I have no questions.
Director Requejo,
Questions?
Chairman Barclay,
Question.
Director Ortiz, Director Eady,
No question.
Director Lee.
No questions.
There are no further questions. Director Jakes.
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes. Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 9.
Number 9 is review of an ordinance authorizing a lease agreement with Romaine Empire, Inc., DBA's Farmer's Fridge, to install, operate, and maintain refrigerated food vending machines at designated rail stations. Jeremy.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer. Today, I present for your consideration an ordinance authorizing a lease agreement with Romaine Empire, Inc., doing business as Farmer's Fridge. Farmer's Fridge operates refrigerated food vending machines. They have operated 2 vending machines in CTA stations since 2019, and their current contract expires in August 13, 2024. Farmer's Fridge responded to an open RFP for specialty vending through Jones Lang LaSalle, and their proposal was deemed beneficial to CTA by staff. The new contract is for 3 years with 2 1-year options, and includes the existing machines at Fullerton on the red, brown, purple line, and Damon on the pink line, and a new location at 95th on the red line. Farmer's Fridge will pay a CTA monthly fixed fee of $50 per machine and 3% of monthly sales, and a monthly flat fee to offset the electricity used by the machines. The contract will generate non-fare box revenue to CTA, as well as providing liquidity to CTA customers. That concludes my remarks, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
$50 per machine.
Plus 3% of sales. So for instance, over the last 5 years, we've made about $7,000. We expect to make about $1,800 a year, plus 3%, kind of growing based on the number of transactions that happen on an annual basis.
And that's $7,000 per machine.
Well, we had 2 machines out previously. We'll now have 3 machines. We'll continue to press Farmer's Fridge to look to expand the number of machines throughout the system, because we think that this is not only a revenue maker, I mean, albeit not huge, but a revenue maker for CTA, but in some ways, more importantly, a customer amenity. And it was very important for us to see them, put a machine down at 95th Street. And we'll look for other opportunities throughout the system to address some of the food desert issues, albeit this is a relatively small platform, but address some of the issues to available food, good quality food through these machines. So, they keep a very close eye on, daily turnover in these machines, make sure everything's fresh, make sure that it's being serviced, regularly and daily. And again, I think that this provides a nice customer amenity for folks as they're using the system.
Thank you.
We'll take other questions. Director Ruppel. Chairman Barclay.
No question.
Director Ortiz.
I appreciate that comment on both we're providing for our riders, but also hopefully it's a great also asset for staff members who are in those stations to get access to fresh food.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Director Eady.
No question.
Director Lee.
Yeah, just building on the question from Director Ortiz, does staff get a discount or like the CTA? Is that included in the contract somewhere? Because that would be great.
Yeah, no discount at this time. I think that's a good question. We'll see what opportunities there are, but there's no discount at this time.
Yeah, I think
But,
I was going to say it would be a great benefit for staff, et cetera. So,
Jeremy, do you know what's the average cost of the food?
from my recollection, it's, $5 to $7, I believe. But I'll follow up with you. But just from, kind of personal experience, I think it was around that, but I'll follow up with you on the specific.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
Now leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz and seconded by Director Lee that this ordinance be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Ruppel.
Yes.
Motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 10.
10 is review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Fuse Technology to install, operate, and maintain mobile charging vending machines at designated rail stations. Jeremy.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and today I present for your consideration an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Fuse Technology. Fuse operates mobile charging vending machines. They currently operate 50 mobile charging vending machines on CTA property after acquiring Mobile Cubes, Inc. Their current contract expires August 13th, 2024. Fuse responded to an open RFP for specialty vending through Jones Lang LaSalle, and their proposal was deemed beneficial to CTA by staff. The new contract is for 3 years with 2 one-year options. Fuse will pay CTA 20% of monthly sales and a monthly flat fee to offset the cost of electricity used by the machines. The contract will generate non-farebox revenue for CTA as well as provide an amenity for CTA customers. This concludes my remarks, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I have no questions, Jeremy.
Director Ruppel.
I have a question about the distribution of the charging stations. If I'm reading the map correctly, there are no charging stations anywhere in the west side of Chicago and anywhere between 35th Street and 79th Street. Is that correct?
That's correct. We do have a couple, on the far south side. We have one in Forest Park on the west side, but this is something that's been identified by staff as well. And we're working with Fuse to expand the network to have better distribution across the entire system, and specifically focusing on the west side and the south side to improve that distribution of where the cubes are.
When would be the next opportunity to have them distribute their chargers more equitably?
It's ongoing. So this is not a one bite at the apple with Fuse to expand that network. This is something that we've already been having these discussions with and looking at different stations across the system to expand that network. And we'll continue on a regular basis. I mean, we're in constant contact and conversation with Fuse as well as Farmers Fridge, the prior contract, to look at opportunities to expand those platforms and get better distribution across the system.
That's something we ask our vendors when they
This is
come.
yes.
Do we have any criteria to say yes, no, depending on the distribution?
Yes, it's definitely something that we press very hard on to ensure that, there is adequate and appropriate distribution across the system. And that they're not just kind of cherry picking certain stations, that we want to ensure that they are having a diverse distribution of their product, whether we're talking about mobile cubes or anything else that comes through finance and other departments. Frankly, we want to make sure that they are being inclusive of the distribution of their product, whatever that may be.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ortiz.
Just wanted to add on that. I know we often talk about the south and the west side, but there's very much also south.
Absolutely.
So if you want to keep that in mind when you're looking through all those distribution of partners, must be part of. Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Director Eady.
Yeah, I would just be curious to know if you can share, what was the process used to determine the selection of those stations? Could you help me there?
So the vendors themselves do their own analysis based on, kind of foot traffic at the stations and other criteria that they use. Both of these vendors, as well as other revenue contracts that we have, have a number of these, whatever product that they have. So in this case, the charging stations, they have these at different sports venues, different airports, different kind of venues across the country. And they have kind of certain, metrics that they look at in terms of, different things that they know of who would be using and buying those products. So that's kind of what they target. And as I indicated, what we target is making sure that whatever is being, provided is being provided equitably across the system. So, again, we want to make sure that, these vendors, and we have the same issue, in the same conversation with our ATM vendors and things like that, to make sure that, if they do want to participate in the program, that they do understand the diversity goals that we have in terms of geographic, kind of diversity within the system to include the entire system and not just cherry picking certain sites.
Because I was just wondering if they were tapping in to any data that CTA is able to provide them in light of, I'm thinking, foot traffic. Is that a part of how they're making that evaluation?
Yes, I mean, that is definitely a factor in this, and we work with them closely. And we do the same even for like the advertising contracts and things like that, of where people are kind of coming into the system, where eyeballs or feet are on the system, to ensure that, that they're getting bang for their buck and that we're getting, kind of the monetary benefit of that as well. But again, it goes beyond that. It goes to just ensuring that we are being equitable about the entire system and that we do have, representation around the system. And if you want to participate at CTA, the vendors understand and know that, and we continue to work with them on an ongoing basis to expand that, to ensure that everybody that rides the system has the same access.
Thank you.
I know these aren't large contracts, but still DVE components are important because they bring that degree of sensitivity to the table. It reminds, majority owned vendors that perhaps you should think another way.
Yes.
And so I think that's why it's real important to have DVE participation in all these contracts, because I think it also adds a value to how contractors and businesses think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those are some of the conversations that we have. And frankly, with some of the vendors, it's the first time, that they're kind of, working on that issue. So I think it's kind of, kind of walking them through the process and converting kind of how they think about things in a different way. And I think once they get it, it kind of clicks and then that is able to be extrapolated to other transit agencies in other jurisdictions around the country. So, I think it ends up being a win-win, but it is somewhat of a learning process for some of the vendors that haven't participated in CTA or the city of Chicago.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that might be helpful with if you a broader view on a system map of what vendors operate at what stations. We're not talking necessarily about vendors. I think it's safe to say, based on the comments that you all, to Jeremy, and also the conversation I've had with Jeremy directly, that vendors while we go how we get have a okay take that we are like that. So let us give you a broader picture of both, and also
Good. Okay.
Director Lee?
I'm glad these discussions are happening, and no further comments from me. Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Yes. Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 11.
Review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with RTA, Metra, and PACE for the Regional Day Pass Pilot Program.
Hi, sir. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good afternoon, directors. Molly Poppy. I am the Chief Planning and Innovation Officer for the CTA, and I'm joined today by Nicholas Crone. Nicholas is our new Vice President of Fare Systems. So we're here today to talk about the Regional Day Pass. The Regional Day Pass is, as you mentioned, Director Jakes, it is a work that we've been doing with the Regional Transit Authority, the RTA, Metra, and PACE in order to further fare integration. It really builds on the work that we've done over the last couple of years to simplify our fare structure and also improve the integration that we have with Metra and PACE. Just here has a timeline of some of the recent changes that we've made to our fare structure over the last couple of years. We've eliminated CTA to CTA transfers. We've reduced all of our pass fare products significantly. And then in the last year, we combined our unlimited ride products. So all of our 1 day, 3 day, 7 day, and 30 day passes are also work on PACE. And then we also changed the Metra Link Up Pass to the Regional Connect Pass, which is a monthly pass that works on CTA and PACE for those that have purchased the Metra monthly ticket. And then today, this is the next phase of that. This is a 1 day integration. I would note, I think it's important that CTA doesn't have a single standalone fare product in this. Every single one of our fare products is integrated with PACE, and then we also have these 2 fare products that are integrated and with. And just as a reminder on what we've done on the Regional Connect Pass and how we've seen really strong growth. We've seen great growth over the last year or so since we introduced the Regional Connect Pass, that monthly pass that works with CTA, Metra, and PACE. And we do anticipate that based on the market that we saw for the Regional Connect Pass, we think the Regional Day Pass will have a strong uptake as well. And we also think it's going to unlock an important demographic of riders because the Regional Connect Pass is only available to monthly riders. And that does require a significant outlay of expense. You have to buy the Metro monthly, which is $100, sometimes a bit more. Plus then you buy the Regional Connect Pass at $35. This Regional Day Pass really does take that cost down and allows for a really affordable way for our riders to get where they need to go throughout the region. So the Regional Day Pass is going to be available on the Ventra app. It will be essentially a day pass. So you purchase it and you activate it, and then it is going to expire by 3 a.m. the next day. It is going to be cost based on the Metro zones. So there's 4 Metro zones, and it is essentially going to be a combination of the cost of a Metro ticket and a cost of a CTA pace one day. I'm just going to use the example of Metro Zone 1, but you can see all the fares up here. Metro Zone Fare 1, which is essentially inside the city of Chicago, that one-day ticket is $7.50. CTA ticket or CTA one-day pass is $5. So if you bought those separately, it'd be $12.50. What we're offering under the Regional Day Pass is $10. So we're offering a $2.50 reduction to the rider on that ticket. And then it'll be the same $2.50 reduction on Zone 2, on Zone 3, and Zone 4. So every time the customer is going to get a $2.50 savings. We are recommending the board approve an intergovernmental agreement, between MetroPace and RTA to allow us to implement a 6-month pilot for us to test this Regional Day Pass so that we can measure its success and determine if this is something that we want to then continue to offer full time and we want to make it part of our fare product, and also see if there's other information that we glean from that and there's other past products that we may want to launch in coordination with Metro and Pace. Really important to this is that we are not going to lose revenue on this. While we do think it will induce ridership, additionally, RTA has agreed to reimburse the transit agencies for any lost revenue from the Regional Day Pass. So we, between Metro, CTA, and Pace, any revenue that we may lose from the Regional Day Pass, we will be reimbursed up to $1 million. At this point, we anticipate a go live in early fall. So we'll be able to take advantage of people going back to work, and as well as individuals starting back up at school, because we do know school is a time where we see a lot of ridership. So that is the Regional Day Pass. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Oh, this is great. I mean, you have been talking about it for a while, so it's going to be nice to see it come to fruition.
I just want to commend you guys for working with the other service boards to do this. It shows that we can cooperate and work together as well for the benefit of our customers here.
Director Requejo.
Nice job. Congrats to the team. And just curious as to, because this is a pilot, what are some of the data points that you are planning to collect to decide at the end of the 6 months?
Yeah, one of the key indicators that we're going to look at is we're going to look at those linked trips. So we know now who rides Metro, who rides CTA and Pace, and what we'll look at through the Regional Day Pass is how many of those individuals now are making that linked trip. How often do we now see someone who maybe only took Metro or only took CTA and Pace? How many of them are now doing a Metro to a Pace bus or a Metro to CTA? So that's one of the key indicators that we're looking at. We're also looking to see how many people may move out of pay-per-use into the pass. So pay-per-use is oftentimes something that people utilize because they don't think a pass is available to them. They either think it's too expensive or they're say, I don't ride enough. And so what we've noticed, if individuals move from pay-per-use to a pass, we do see a percentage increase in the amount of times that they ride. So we see if you're on pay-per-use, you ride less than if you're doing riding on a pass. So that's another thing that we're going to look at to see if you've gone from pay-per-use to a pass. And then once you're on that pass, do we see that ridership increasing?
You know, I think it's important to point out that the pass strategy is actually something that's sort of permeated a lot of our work in terms of our revamping of our fare media strategy in general, because as we try to get ridership back, part of it is figuring out the best pass products or the best fare products that are likely to generate the most ridership. And so when you hear us talk about discounting the monthly passes, when you hear us talk about eliminating the transfers, all of that is part of a broader strategy to bring our ridership back and to get our numbers going in the right direction, which we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you know, we are seeing the benefits of the overall strategy.
Director Ortiz.
Yeah, thank you for that. Again, second, the congratulations, and just wanted to share what I shared at the briefing to really think about who the profile is and how do we diversify that profile to benefit from this pass.
Director Eady.
Yeah, I just want to commend the negotiation point on RTA reimbursing lost revenue. That was a good move. So you're to be commended for that.
Thank you, sir.
You know, to that point, Reverend Edie, that goes to a bigger conversation that we're having on public transportation in general. The conversations that have sort of framed the understanding of what the challenges are between CTA, Metro, and PACE have in many cases been viewed from a governance or policymaking position and not from a funding position. And the truth of the matter is, we have the money to support the type of things that we're doing. It's a lot easier to get the agreement on the policy side. You don't have the money, then it becomes much more difficult. And that's the part that we're trying to educate legislators down in Springfield about, which is the money really matters.
Yeah.
Look at systems that do achieve this type of fair other things. It's because they're subsidizing their system at a level that allows for that interaction to occur without basically putting any of the entities involved in financial jeopardy. So it's a big foundational piece of that bigger conversation.
Director Lee.
Just want to echo, the sentiment that's been stated previously. Really congratulations to the team, and also Molly, welcome back. And as a writer myself, I'm excited to test this pilot. So congrats, looking forward to seeing this potentially expand as well.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Requejo.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 12.
You have an ordinance establishing the authority's disadvantaged business enterprise DBE program goal for federal fiscal years 2025 through 2027.
Good morning, directors.
Morning.
I'm Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs. I'm here this morning to present for your approval the CTA's Triennial Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE, goal for federal fiscal years 2025 through 2027. Per the federal DBE regulations, CTA is required to calculate a goal every 3 years based on our projected federal spend for those years. The period for this goal is October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2027. We followed the methodology in the DBE regulations by compiling all the contracts that we anticipate awarding during this triennial period that will use federal funds. We then broke each of those contracts down by work category, or NAICS code, and used the availability of the DBEs in each category to calculate our base number, which was 16%. From there, we looked at our historical attainment and adjusted the base number up to our proposed goal of 21%. I would like to point out that we will still review each contract that we included in this goal and assess a contract-specific DBE goal based on the cost estimates and DBE availability at the time that we advertise this contract. More directly, setting a triennial goal at 21% does not mean that each contract will have a 21% goal during this period. I would like to note that the DBE dollars resulting from this goal are more than the last 3 triennial periods combined by more than $188 million. As you all know, the CTA has a robust DBE program, and we strive for the contractors and our projects to reflect the communities that we serve. We look at the triennial goal as a floor, and we will do our best to maximize DBE opportunities and exceed this goal. We did not set this goal in a vacuum. We held a consultation session with our DBE advisory committee, our technical assistance agencies, to walk them through our methodology. We also posted the goal and the methodology to the CTA website for public comment from May 1st to May 31st, and held an open house here in the lobby for public comment, for the public to come in and provide comments. We received 4 public comments. 2 of those supported the goal. 1 thought the goal was too low, even though they supported the methodology. And all the comments supported our robust DBE program and encouraged us to continue supporting the DBE community. If approved today, the goal will be submitted to US DOT by August 1st. And if approved by US DOT, will go into effect on October 1st. Happy to answer any questions.
I have no questions, Juan Pablo. Thank you.
Director Requejo,
Questions?
Director Ortiz,
Thank you for all your work on this. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Eady.
Yeah, it was just the one point that I raised up during the briefing about expanding how the notices are published in terms of some of these others. But you did speak to the fact of your social media strategy, which cannot be challenged in that regard. But there are those, for whatever reason, social media sometimes does not strike them. But these other periodicals can be helpful.
And we're happy to work with you to add more to our list.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Lee,
No further questions. Great work, Juan Pablo.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
The motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 13.
Review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of primary and excess property insurance coverage for policy year 2024, 2025. Sisavon.
Good morning, Sisavon Baker, Deputy General Counsel in the CTA's Law Department. This is an ordinance authorizing the 2024-2025 property insurance policy. The policy runs from July to July and is renewed each year. Our insurance broker, Misro, Alliant, and Paradigm marketed the renewal to both domestic and international insurance market. A consortium of international and domestic providers provided the best combination of coverage and price. The proposed premium for next year's policy, along with taxes and fees, is approximately $7,031,587, which is an approximate increase of just under $600,000 or 9.3% from this year's rate. The rate increase is typically based on increases in asset values, negative claim history, and the state of the insurance market. This year, we had a minor increase in our values from 7.3 billion to 7.6 billion. We also have a pending claim. And also the insurance market remains hardened for the 7th year, causing insurers to withdraw capacity and limit their exposures and thus increasing rates. We recommend renewal with this consortium. I am happy to answer any questions.
I have no questions, Sisavon.
Director Requejo,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay,
No question.
Director Ortiz, Director Eady,
No question.
Director Lee,
No questions. Thank you, Sisavon.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
I now have leave to place this on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Requejo,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes. We may now proceed to agenda item number 14.
Review of an ordinance approving the name of the new rail station on the Green Line at Damon Avenue. Catherine Hosinski and Tony Boletta. Did I say that correct? Okay, Hosinski. All right.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Catherine Hozinski, Acting Vice President for the Communications Department. I'm here to present for your approval an ordinance seeking authorization to formally name CTA's newest rail station. The Chicago Department of Transportation is currently constructing a station along the Green Line, Lake Street Branch at Damon Avenue. We are recommending formally naming this station Damon, which largely follows the existing nomenclature for station naming along this branch, with two obvious exceptions, those being Harlem Lake, which is located at Harlem and South Boulevard, not Lake Street, and then also Conservatory Central Park Drive, as that station was built as a direct means of access to a major public attraction. All costs associated with purchasing and installing new signage are incorporated as part of the overall construction costs. And any costs associated with updates to existing CTA materials and collateral will be absorbed as part of routine material updates. Now, the formal naming of CTA stations is largely for navigational purposes, to make it easier for our riders to understand where they are or where they are traveling to. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Director Requejo?
No questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
No.
Director Eady?
No question.
Director Lee?
No question. Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes. You may now proceed to agenda item number 15.
Review of an ordinance authorizing amendments to the authority's public transportation agency rail and bus safety plans. Nancy Ellen and Jeff, just Nancy?
It's just me.
Okay.
Nancy Ellen Usman, your Chief Safety and Security Officer. FTA's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, PTAS Rule 49 CFR Part 673, requires operators of public transportation systems that are recipients or subrecipients of FTA grant funds to develop safety plans that include the processes and procedures necessary for implementing the Safety Management System, SMS, and include safety performance targets. CTA has two agency safety plans, one for bus and one for rail. Recently, the FTA in April of this year revised Part 673 to update it to be consistent with the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which was enacted in 2021. The infrastructure law requires transit agencies to have a joint labor safety committee consisting of 50% management representatives and 50% frontline workers. The revised Part 673 as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law requires that the Joint Labor Safety Committee develop and adopt the ASPs and safety performance targets, which are incorporated into the ASPs. The Joint Labor Safety Committee adopted the rail ASP on May 17th, 2024, and the bus ASP on June 3rd, 2024. Under IDOT's, Illinois Department of Transportation's Program Standards Manual and FTA regulation, CTA is required to review the ASPs annually. CTA issued its original ASPs in July 2020 and made no changes to either ASP in 2021. CTA last revised its ASPs in 2022 and reviewed the ASPs last year and made no updates. As part of its annual review, which began January 15th of this year, CTA has made modifications to both ASPs for 2024. The Joint Labor Safety Committee recommends that the board approve the revised ASPs, which are attached as exhibits A and B to the ordinance. SMS is a formal organization-wide approach to managing safety risk and assuring the effectiveness of the agency's safety risk mitigation. SMS includes systemic procedures, practices, and policies for managing risks and hazards. SMS components include a safety management policy, which is signed by President Carter as the accountable executive, safety risk management, safety assurance, and safety promotion. Substantive changes to the rail safety plan include revisions to the 2024 safety performance goals, an updated SMS safety management policy statement, changes in response to new requirements in Part 673, and a significantly revised IDOT Program Standards Manual. The changes to the bus safety plan include revised safety performance targets and plans, policy and procedures to better reflect actual CTA practices. The finalized rail ASP must receive approval from CTA's State Safety Oversight Agency, the SSOA, which is IDOT. IDOT previously reviewed a draft of the rail ASP and provided a checklist to CTA in response. And CTA will seek final approval from IDOT once the board has approved the plan and the document is fully executed. Through implementation of the amended ASPs, CTA's customers will continue to experience the benefits of improved safety when using CTA services, as will CTA employees. Any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Requejo?
Just clarifying question. So the performance indicators have been agreed upon by a joint committee that includes 50% management and 50% workers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Got it. Could you point out, because this is a very long and very complex plan.
Yes, yes.
Based on those changes, are there some examples of how some of these modifications will make our system safer for riders?
So if you're talking about the agency safety plans themselves, we have put in training requirements related to employees. We've put in additional information that's related specifically back to regulatory requirements. So for example, IDOT is now doing risk-based inspections of the property. So that's been updated in the rail program. And those are audits. So that's a safety assurance activity that we get audited both internally by IDOT and by our own internal auditor. So those are things that are in the agency safety plans. If you're talking specifically about the safety performance targets, FTA enacted a regulation that says we use a 3-year rolling average. And the concept of SMS is continuous improvement. So you always want to be going under your targets. So we're setting these targets, and this is almost like a baseline. And I would hope that a year from now, how we performed would be reflective of that continuous improvement process.
Got it. I don't know if this is a question or a comment. Decide. There's a lot of performance metrics here that are really important for people to know. And I don't need to share with anyone how much concern exists today as to both safety and perception of safety in the system, and how many people come to me, and many of us, saying, I don't ride CTA because I don't feel safe. I'm thinking, what are ways that we can communicate to people these improvements, and that CTA is actually working to address some of those in a way that is a little bit more
user-friendly?
Yes. And
customer-friendly. Yes.
Communication to customers, and especially trying to bring in all those folks who are still feeling, I don't feel safe in the system.
Well, and I think when you use the word safety, you're probably talking more about security. I think that there is a distinction between safety and security. So with security maybe being a subset of safety, because safety is the yellow line incident. That is a safety related incident, but I think what you're talking about is the perception of security. So we can certainly work with communications to do a better job of highlighting, activities that we're taking, as I said, for that continuous improvement. And do a better job of communicating that, to let people know that we are, doing things to address security concerns as well as safety concerns.
And thank you for pointing those out, because it's important to separate them. And yet in the indicators, they're both kind of together, because I see assaults included.
Yes.
There. And at the end of the day, it's about, in general, perception for folks. I'm also thinking about instances like the fires that took place.
Yep, the recent ones. Yep.
And there is a sense of out there about what's going on, right? And it's super important to communicate to people that CTA is aware of this being a systemic issue, if it is, and this is how we're addressing it through a more, I would say, proactive, communication.
Absolutely.
How safety and security are being addressed.
And there are certain things like the transit worker assaults. That's something that we specifically, as a committee, the Joint Labor Safety Committee, is required to take a look at and figure out mitigation to reduce vehicle and pedestrian accidents on the bus side of the house. That's another activity that the committee is specifically, from a regulatory standpoint, required to take a look at those numbers and try and reduce through mitigation. So we are constantly looking at those issues and trying to figure out ways to mitigate. And then hopefully our performance next year will reflect that those mitigations were effective. And if not, we look at other mitigations.
Thanks.
Director, I hear you. And I think that what you've heard and what you've been briefed on are obviously the internal processes that we put in place to really stay on top of the safety and security issues that are required both by law, but also as a good steward of, as a public agency. Getting out that information, letting them know about things that we have in place and how the metrics are reflecting positive trends, to me is just as important as the conversations we have around ridership and other things, which are obviously much more visible to our customers. But we know from our customer surveys and other data, both anecdotally and otherwise, that personal safety continues to be a concern. Some of that is driven by obviously the media focus on issues that occur on CTA. And we have to continue to really aggressively push back against that narrative and to put out the information that shows that we are taking proactive steps and we are doing things to make things better and that we are seeing the results of those activities. So it is an item that we'll continue to work on and we'll continue to keep the board informed as to how we're improving on that aspect of what we do.
Thanks.
Director Ortiz. Questions. Chairman Barclay. Director Eady.
Yeah, with the priority being the Joint Labor Safety Committee, safety. First of all, I need to know, what is the size of that committee? Number of people?
So it's an 8-person committee.
Okay.
It's 4 frontline workers, so 2 from the bus representatives and 2 from rail. And then on the management side, I chair the committee. And then the chief transit officer and his 2 vice presidents, 1 from rail and 1 for us, are the management representatives.
And what are the designation of the workers, rail, bus?
So they decide, the unions decide who they want to represent them. So there's 2 representatives from rail. I think they're both rail operators, and then 2 bus drivers. But the unions select who they want as their representatives.
That's exactly what I was wondering. What were their roles? So the operators and drivers.
Exactly.
Direct.
Yeah, so no one actually work on tracks or anything like that.
So it's interesting you raise that. We have had discussions internally about adding somebody from the trades and expanding the committee. So that is something that we're looking at probably for the coming year. So we would add somebody on the management side as well as somebody representing the trades.
Okay, thank you.
Director Lee.
Thanks, Nancy, for the overview and your work on this committee. Would love to keep more updated if you want to keep the board informed of what the mitigations you're exploring, because exploring is one thing, but implementing is another thing, and wanting to know exactly more specifics would make us all feel safer, even on internally, externally, all over. So just looking forward to hearing more of the updates.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will plan to give the board regular updates on the work of the committee and the mitigations we're putting in place. I think it's another way, as you pointed out, to proactively get the message out about the work we're doing here. And we'll basically look to align on some sort of regular report back to the board on doing and how it's ultimately implemented.
Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place the sign up on the omnibus for board approval?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that this item be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Director Eady.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number A1 Transit Operations. I have no questions.
Are there questions from any other members of the board? Director Requejo,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay,
None.
Director Ortiz, Director Eady, Director Lee.
None.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number B1 and B2, contract awards for infrastructure. No questions, Georgette.
Are there questions from any other members of the board? Director Requejo, Chairman Barclay, Director Ortiz, Director Eady, Director Lee,
None.
None.
Jakes.
Our next order of business today is the review of contract number C1 and contract award for finance. No questions.
Are there questions of any other members of the board? Director Requejo, Chairman Barclay, Director Ortiz, Director Eady, Director Lee.
None.
You may proceed.
Our next order of business today is a review of contract number D1 and a contract award for planning. No questions.
Are there questions of any other members of the board? Director
No.
Requejo, Barclay, Ortiz, Eady, Lee. Jakes, you may proceed.
Next order of business is the review of contract one, contract award for patients. No questions.
Director Requejo, Chairman Barclay, Director Ortiz. No. Director Eady.
No.
Director Lee.
None.
Next order of business is the review of contract number G1, contract award for technology. No questions.
Director Requejo,
No questions.
Director Chairman Barclay,
None.
Director Ortiz. No. Director Eady.
None.
Director Lee.
None.
Next order of business today is the review of contract number I1, contract award for law. No questions.
Director Requejo,
No questions.
Chairman Barclay,
None.
Director Ortiz. No. Director Eady. None. Director Lee.
None.
Is there,
If there are no further questions.
is there no further questions on the contracts? May I have leave to place the 8 contracts on the omnibus?
Move.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the 8 contracts be placed on the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Ortiz, Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Ortiz, Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
motion passes.
Finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved that the meeting of finance item budget for June 25th, 2024 be adjourned. Take a roll call vote. Director Requejo,
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Ortiz. Yes. Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
We're now adjourned. Thank you.
Recess has expired. First order of business is public comment. Georgette?
Okay.
Excuse me, Chairman, can you hear the interpreter?
Yes.
We're having some difficulty understanding the board. The microphones are going in and out, and it's been very difficult. We've not been able to interpret a lot of the comments. If people could please keep the microphone close and not look away, then we'll be able to transmit the
Okay,
meeting.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
And we'll talk louder. Chairman Barclay, we had 4 registered public commentators. We have one who is shown up, Mr. Steve Hostel. Mr. Hostel,
It's Hastalis.
very good. You may have a seat, sir. Mr. Hostel, you have, first of all, welcome to the CTA Transit Board meeting for June.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes to make your remarks, and your time will begin now.
I am, where's the microphone?
Just speak loudly, sir.
Okay. I am Steve Hestellis. I live in the Edgewater community, and I'm active in the National Federation of the Blind. So here's my statement. Blind and visually impaired people are entitled to the same information CTA provides sighted passengers. Braille and raised print signs, bus stop signs should give the same information that sighted passengers receive. Route numbers, names, and destinations. The need for information in these formats becomes critical at combo stops, that is, bus stops which several routes serve. In recent months, the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois Chicago chapter has met in a location with several nearby bus stops. Several bus routes serve all these stops. Most bus stops are near the downtown area or in the downtown area. And for example, the northbound bus stop on Michigan at Huron has a raised print and braille sign which says bus stop. It gives no further information about route numbers, destinations. And this provides less information to a blind or visually impaired passenger than the CTA provides sighted passengers. Not every visually impaired or blind passenger has an extensive citywide knowledge of CTA bus service. Years ago, CTA prepared and installed signs giving comparable information at rail stations to comply with federal regulations implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, ADA. Certainly, CTA can make comparable information available to blind and visually and low vision bus riders. The National Federation of the Blind of Illinois Chicago chapter has conveyed its concerns to CTA's ADA Advisory Committee, but has not received a satisfactory response. We urge CTA to work with the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois to improve information access for blind and visually impaired CTA bus riders. Thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, I'm, willing to work with you.
Thank you for that.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hestel.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Let me have my staff follow up on this issue. I share the concerns about how we're communicating this particular group of people with disabilities, and I want to better understand what we are doing or what we aren't doing to help the visually impaired. I know that the Braille signage was more of an attempt to deal with distinguishing bus stop signs from other street furniture, other poles and other things that are on the sidewalk. That's not the same as the issue that's being raised here today. And I do think that that's a legitimate concern that we need to figure out a solution to. So let me follow up with our team, and we will report back to the board on how we can address making sure that information is being provided in a way that's helpful to this community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Behind you.
There are no other public comments, Mr. Chairman.
Our next item on the agenda will be the Citizens Advisory Report, which will be given by Ms. Raby, who is Chair of the CTA Citizens Advisory Report.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Raby is with us remotely via Zoom today. And
hello, can you all hear me?
yes, we
Hi,
can hear you.
Great. Good morning. Thank you all for the opportunity to share updates about the CIB. My name is Katanya Raby, and I am the chairperson of the CTA Citizen Advisory Board. I'm excited to share that this month marks our 1-year anniversary with CIB. So last year in June is when we were officially appointed to serve. So very excited to share after this first year, and happy anniversary to us. Over this last year, we've learned a lot about how CTA works on the inside. And we've had many hours of briefings and on all kinds of topics, ranging from CTA and how it measures performance, the annual budget, the Bus Visions project, the chat box initiative, CTA's marketing and community strategies, the CTA Innovations Studio project, and most recently, a very interesting deep dive into wayfaring and signage. So much of this information has broadened our horizons and deepened our knowledge bank for, just how we move forward as a board. And we believe that our role is not to be information silos. So we're committed to representing the people from the communities where we work and live. And so we want to celebrate this year by also clarifying our mission. So we've been working together to really think through what our mission and vision is as a board and how we can have a positive impact in ways that not only helps to support the hard work that's being done by thousands of transportation professionals, but also helps to demystify what's being done here across our constituencies. So terms that come up a lot that a lot of citizens approach us about, or things that we just are learning about as citizens ourselves, citizens that use the system, are being used a lot in the media. And one of those big terms is fiscal cliff. And so we, have been wanting to make sure that we explore that term and really think through it and work together to help the rest of, riders in the Chicagoland area to understand what that means and how we can be supportive of making it not sound so scary, but understanding what we can do to help create support around making sure that that doesn't occur. So those are some of the conversations that we've been having, and also really trying to push others to help insist that Springfield and the federal government, helps us to identify new funding sources so that we can continue to do and live and be happy with our transportation system. So as we're moving into our second year of service with the CIB, we're identifying opportunities to help educate our communities on these topics that don't really get enough airtime in the press. And they're just kind of truncated in a way that leaves room for interpretation in ways that can lead to misinformation or disinformation. And it doesn't help CTA, it doesn't help us as riders. So really just trying to figure out how to be better at communicating these concerns and what's being done to alleviate them. So we're excited to share, in the opportunities to ensure that Chicago and the services that the CTA provides are, and the steps the CTA is taking to be clear about what's going on, including what are the challenges and the wins we want to help to promote that information in a way that's better received by the public, as we are still defining our role in this space. So those are things that we'll be examining over the next 12 months, and then hopefully setting up the platform for the next group of board members to take over from there. So that's all for my report. Thank you all for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Chairman Raby. Any questions from any other board members?
Well, congratulations on your first year again.
Yeah, congratulations. First, I wanted to express how glad I am to see Katanya Rabi being the chair of this group, having worked with her for many years and knowing how she puts always others first and communities first in concerns. So great seeing you in this capacity. Appreciate the focus on communications, misunderstandings, filling the gap, because that's something that I care about too. And thank you for giving us a sneak peek of what some of those miscommunications issues that are difficult to understand can be, like the fiscal cliff. I was curious as to, are there other topics that come up during your conversations at the advisory committee that would be helpful for all of us to support you on and help, communicate better to not just to your committee members, but to residents of Chicago?
Thank you. We are definitely wanting to create like a feedback loop and be part of that. And, we hear a lot, and it's important for us to really determine what that, how we can funnel this up to you all, as well as to the leadership of CTA. And so we're just really wanting to make sure that we solidify our space within that communication chain. And so I think this is really the first big step for us to do that. So thank you for your support in that. And we hope that we're able to connect with you all more in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item of business on the agenda is the president's report, which will be given by President Dorval Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good morning. Today, I have a fairly brief report. I wanted to really focus on ridership improvements and the milestones that we have achieved, particularly over the last several weeks. And I'm going to have Molly Poppy, who is CTA Chief Planning and Innovation Officer, and her staff provide you with a detailed presentation about some of the good things that are happening with our ridership trends, along with some of the great initiatives that will be coming out in our marketing section. And as we go through this presentation, I want to be clear about a couple of things. One, we made tremendous improvements. Two, we still have a long ways to go. And three, how we continue to promote CTA. I think it's been interesting just sitting here today in this board meeting, the number of times the conversation has focused on communication and how we make our customers aware of the things that we're doing and how can we improve upon that as we go forward. I certainly hear some of that in terms of the presentation you're going to get today, but I think there's still more opportunity for us to continue to amplify that and improve it. We certainly welcome the board's input as we look to find ways to really make sure that the CTA brand really being fully appreciated and understood amongst the residents within the city of Chicago, which is ultimately the objective that all of us have in common in terms of supporting public transportation as we move forward. May was the first month since the beginning of the pandemic that CTA averaged more than 1 million weekday rides. We also experienced a post-pandemic weekly ridership high of 6.397 million rides in the past month. In addition, during the week ending June 8th, there were 3 1 million ride days for a total of 25 million ride days since the beginning of the year. For comparison, this time last year, there had been no million ride days. In fact, there were only 27 million ride days during the entire year of 2023. Finally, for the week ending June 15th, 7 of the previous 8 weeks were at or over the 6 million ride mark. The lone exception was Labor Day week, when customers took only 5.7 throughout the. I want to take this opportunity to personally thank all of our employees, especially our frontline employees, the customer service attendants and representatives that welcome our customers to our stations, and the bus and rail operators who move our riders across the system are in fact faces of CTA. We want to thank them for doing what is often a very difficult job with the type of skill and professionalism that we expect of all of our employees. As many of you know, sometimes CTA receives notoriety for the actions of a few of our employees who do not meet up to our standards. I think it's important to remember that we have over 8,000 employees who are delivering on that standard every single day. And those are the employees that I certainly honor and respect, the work that they do to keep our system running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So now I'm going to have Molly come up to give a presentation. She is going to be joined by one of our CTA veterans, Elsa Gutierrez, who is the Vice President of Scheduling and Service Planning, along with one of our newer agency leaders who is coming before the board for the first time, Tara Bader, who is our Vice President of Strategy and Innovation. Molly, I turn it over to you.
Seriously. Beast here. That mouse isn't working.
While Molly continues to work on this, I'm going to dance for a bit, but she seems to have fixed the problem.
No, I didn't. You made me nervous now. Okay. All right. So good afternoon, directors. Molly Poppy, Chief Planning and Innovation Officer. And as Dorval mentioned, I am joined by two of my colleagues, Kara and Elsa. We want to talk through some of the strategies that the Planning and Innovation Department is undertaking to drive ridership growth. I think we've seen some really tremendous ridership growth over the last couple of months, and that is due in large part to a lot of the efforts that folks across the agency are making in order to ensure there's a better experience for our customers. Oh. There we go. Okay. All right. So a couple of the key indicators that we're going to discuss and some of the key strategies that we're going to go over is some of the service investments that we've made in the last year, some of the rider experience improvements that we've made, fare enhancements. We just heard about the regional day pass earlier today and some of the marketing. I do want to note that how we're thinking about these strategies is we're not taking a one-size-fits-all approach. Oftentimes, when we thought about transit and when we thought about marketing and driving ridership growth pre-COVID, it was very much rail focused. It was very much downtown commuter focused and peak service focused. How we have started to think about it is, what are those rider segments? What are those off-peak riders? What are those bus versus rail riders? How do we really start to segment out our ridership base and think about how to improve their experience? How do we market to them? How do we make sure that we're making investments that work for them and not having sort of that more of our bread and butter or sort of driving being peak service downtown commuters? Because as we all know, 5 days a week in the office is not going to happen anymore. And, a lot of individuals have relied on CTA for a very long time for travel, and we need to continue to invest in those riders and those riders that have stuck with us. So just really quickly, this is a chart showing all of our ridership in 2019, 2020, 2023, and 2024. You can see in the orange line there, you can see that growth that we've seen over time in ridership since the pandemic. And Dorval highlighted a lot of those key markers around 1 million ride days. I would note pre-COVID, we did roughly about 1.4, 1.5 million rides a day during the week. And so when we talk about this million ride days that are coming really fast and furious in 2024, that is a strong indicator to us that we are gaining that ridership. And I also do want to note that a lot of these days that we saw strong ridership didn't have to do with special events. So it wasn't, Lollapalooza happened and that was driving ridership. It is everyday riders. It is folks that are using us not only to get to work, but they're using us to get to care for their families, their children, and doing other leisure activities. And I think that's really important to see that CTA is serving a host of different riders and not just a subset. The other unique sort of data point that we're able to get because of our Ventra system is the number of active accounts that we see on the system. And so what that means is active accounts are those individuals that are using a Ventra card to ride on the system. And we want to look at that to see how many riders are we seeing on the system now relative to what we saw COVID, unique riders. And we are at 97% of active riders on the system compared to pre-pandemic levels. So what that means is we have almost the same number of active accounts in the system today that we did pre-COVID. But the difference is they're not riding as much. So you can see in the light blue line there, that's showing the active accounts, and the dark blue line is showing the actual number of rides. And so as we think about how do we try to gain more rides, how do we think about getting customers to ride more, we really want to increase that number of rides that those active accounts are taking. Another important data point is what's happening on the weekends. We are seeing a 90% retention of weekend ridership, and this is specifically weekend bus. And so what we know is those individuals are riding CTA almost as much as they rode pre-COVID. And that's a good indicator to us as we start to look forward to 2024 or forward to 2025, is how do we want to continue to encourage weekend ridership? Is there more space for more weekend service? And how do we continue to capitalize on those riders that are riding on the weekends? So we have multiple rider segments that we look at, and one of the two rider classes that we wanted to talk about today and sort of talk about how we're targeting them is what we'll call seasonal infrequent riders. Those are folks that maybe ride once or twice a month. And then we have our frequent riders, so those individuals that are riding us consistently multiple times a week. And how do we ensure that our investments that we're making are supportive of those frequent riders? And how do we also make sure that if they are riding maybe 2 or 3 times a week, how do we maybe convert to a 5th ride, convert to a sixth ride, and making sure that we have the data to support that decision making. Similar to what we looked at with the active venture accounts, this is another example of the individuals, how much they're riding of those folks that we would say are very frequent riders. I think something that's very important to note is there are about 200,000, 198,000 customers who ride around 3 times per week. So that, as you think about how many rides we provide, so we provide 1 million rides a day, and we really do have a small set or a very, I should say, a robust ridership class. They're not as big as we would say as our infrequent riders, but they are riding a lot. They're really giving a lot of our rides. By comparison, roughly we had about 330,000 customers in 2019 that rode 3 or more times per week. So that's just some of those data points that we're thinking about, that we're looking at as we try to understand, how do we target those riders? How do we encourage them to ride more? How do we make sure we're making investments in them? One area that we see a lot of bang for our buck is around bus service. I've talked previously in previous board meetings about all the investments that we're making around bus, and we really see bus service as key to continuing to regain riders, and where we also see a lot of riders continuing to show up day over day. So we've added service levels on, improved service levels on 48 bus routes through June. We have a remaining 28 bus routes to go for fall and winter. That does return us to pre-pandemic service levels. As we start to look to 2025 and we start to look forward, we're going to continue to look at that service, look at how much service we're providing, look at where service may need to be amended to better service our riders or better service new rider groups. One area that we've done this that I will continue that I think is very tactical changes that we can make that can have a quick, immediate impact is looking to extend routes. So we've been working with Alderman Martin's office to extend the number 9 Ashland route. We've been able to extend it 1 mile north to Lawrence. So it really provides that strong connection point along Ashland Avenue from the Ravenswood community and those further north through to downtown and through Ashland. This also does connect with the Metro line. So it really does provide some good connection points where it connects with CTA. It is near a metro station and also is on our bus route. And we've seen noticeable improvements already in our ridership when we've been adding service. We know that frequency can help to drive ridership, and the data has borne that out just in the last month. So when you look at the routes that we have not increased service on, they've seen a ridership growth of 14%. When you look at those routes that we have added service on, they have seen an increase in ridership of 21%. So that has, as a good indicator to us as we continue to look at adding service, is that frequency is what we've heard from our research and from our surveys, that that's what riders want. And when we've been able to provide that to them, they've responded in a way of really coming back to the system and riding more. When we start to think about those riders who maybe are infrequent and how they utilize the system, we look at our one-day customers. So this is a chart showing our growth in one-day rides since January of 2021. And what really has happened is a precipitous growth in the amount of folks purchasing and utilizing a one day. I think that that's a good indicator that, you know, people are using us from time to time and they see that those passes are a good value, which is why we've launched things like the regional day pass. And we've launched other programs that we've reduced the one day to try to drive that ridership. And we talked about the regional day pass back in Finance and Budget Committee, so I'll save you repeating myself on that. And it's not just adding service and it's not just fares. It's also thinking about how we communicate with our customers and also how our customers communicate with us. We are not taking a one-size-fits-all approach to the type of communication that we put out to our customers and how our customers can reach us. So one of the new ways that we're looking to improve communication with customers and allow customers to report issues to us is through a QR code on buses, trains, and at stations. What's really exciting about this is actually something that we've heard from our management staff. So from folks in operations, this was an idea that they came up with and had thought about as part of their management training program. And so it's been something that we're able to take to launch, which is putting QR codes on various buses, trains, and rail stations to do a quick pulse survey, asking customers really quickly, rate our ride. Very similar to what you've seen, after you get a food delivery or maybe you take rideshare from time to time, you will see rate my ride. This is a very similar concept. It allows us to get quicker, in-depth information about what's happening on the system. We also have the chat with CTA that I know my team presented on last month. So you're very familiar with the chatbot and how that's another way for customers to report incidents. We're also working to have better real-time information. So we're working to address communication during those most difficult moments. We know that reroutes happen. We know that there's accidents. We know there's construction, there's service disruption. And we need to find a way to better communicate with customers because that is a way that we can drive customers away from the system. I think what we know is you have one bad experience on CTA, that's going to color your 10 other great experiences that you have. And we want to make sure that we try to limit that bad experience in the way of, so, maybe we can't stop the reroute, we can't stop the service disruption, but we can at least communicate with you better. We can make sure that you know about it, make sure that you can make good decisions about how you're going to get where you need to go. We also are looking at offering new real-time arrival and alert digital signs at bus stops. This is something that is coming out of the Innovation Studio that we approved earlier this year. It's going to be a pilot program where we look to have digital bus stop signage that will provide additional information at our bus stops for customers. And then we are also looking at a single user-friendly app. We are looking to improve the trip planning and digital experience through a new app that will be combined with CTA, Metra, and PACE. So as we think about integrating fares, we also should make it easier for customers to integrate their rides. So we should make it easier for them to plan. And then on the marketing side, so on marketing, we have a host of different campaigns that are underway that have both a primary audience and a secondary audience. And I would say, as we look at our marketing campaigns, we're really trying to look at those frequent riders. How do we take those frequent riders and help them understand that they can use CTA beyond how they traditionally think about it? So beyond how they traditionally think about taking CTA for work or for school, how do we also encourage them to start taking CTA for leisure? And that's where the Connecting Chicago campaign comes in. We're also geo-targeting around airports. We're also trying to target tourists and leisure riders to make sure that the moment that they arrive in Chicago, they know CTA is how they should get around. So once we get you on the system at the airport, the hope is that we are able to continue to keep you traveling on CTA throughout your time in Chicago. We also are partnering with Chicago Fire and Chicago White Sox. We have some marketing that we're doing around popular events. These activities, the partnership with Chicago Fire and the marketing around events, this is really going after that infrequent rider, that seasonal rider. How do we try to get them to come to the system? And some of that marketing that we're doing includes email targeting, tap to pay, and the community connection bus. And this is just a very quick example of the Connecting Chicago campaign. These are examples of where you can travel around the city using CTA to go to some of your favorite activities. And we've been able to actually partner with the Chicago Architectural Center as well. We've been able to continue to partner with those organizations across Chicago that see CTA as a value, and they help us leverage and expand our reach. We have a new resident mailer that's here on the left. In this new resident mailer, again, what we're really trying to do when we put out these geo-targeting, when we send out these new resident mailers, is trying to get people early in the process, trying to get them as they're moving to Chicago, as they're coming to Chicago. You hit them right away with CTA is the best way to get around town. And we've been able to use a partnership with Chicago Fire to not only promote CTA, but also have a discount to Chicago Fire games included on the new resident mailer. And then this just example on the right is an example of some social media campaigns and how we're using social media to target and encourage ridership. Something that we've heard a lot from the board that I want to make sure that you all are aware is, we don't set these marketing campaigns and then walk away. We do have a lot of monitoring and adjusting that we're making throughout. Something on social media that we're really looking at is how we increased engagement. Do we have a higher engagement rate? Do we have more positive engagement as well? And then also making sure that we're in regular communications across the ridership team and the marketing team to make sure if the ridership team is identifying, hey, we're seeing a lot of more rides happening around this event or a lot more rides happening in this community, how do we make sure that then our marketing is reflective of that? Or if we're seeing declines, how do we make sure that maybe our marketing is not being effective in those areas and we need to better target those customers? I think that's it. So this was just a quick overview of some of the tactics that we're doing around marketing and around customer experience and how we're looking to drive ridership. We continue to work on these segments. This is just a quick example of some of the customer segmentation that we're looking at. Is by no means all of our segments. And so as we continue to move forward over the next year, we're going to continue to want to come talk to the board and talk about how we're thinking about customer segmentation, how we're starting to target those customers and the strategies that we're doing around it. Because it is something that we are going to have to continue to adjust year over year. Really, we need to get very agile to do it quarter over quarter. We should not be sort of setting a marketing campaign in January and assume it's going to last the whole year. We have to continue to adjust, and being able to also adjust our service that it can be dynamic as well and meet riders where they are. With that, I'm going to look over at my colleagues because I am newly back. And if I missed anything or if there's things that you want to put a finer point on, please. Covered. All right. With that, I'm happy to take any questions. We're happy to take any questions from the board.
Holly, quick question.
Yeah.
I think all of that is great. You and your predecessor have worked very hard years I've been here to make sure that marketing is great. My concern is always, and we've been talking about it for some years, getting our message. Has there been any conjoining of comms and marketing to get with the Sun-Times, Trib, some community newspapers to sit down and have an invitation to say, you know what, we want to present this to you? Because the reality is, what I see that's driving especially the negative is there's the information CTA puts out, and then there's the information others put out. And as Joe Q Public, I don't know which one is accurate. You know, I'm going to tend to lean more towards Joe Q Public because, you know, the idea is you can't trust bureaucracy. So, you know, has there been any ideas of how to do that so that we can get our story out there?
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna call up Pat Hozinski, the acting vice president of communications. So, you know, we really work hand in glove with the customer communications team around how we are communicating event activities, how we're communicating what's happening on the system. And what we need to start doing a better job of and start thinking about more is to your point of not just providing the instruction, there's this, we need to say, this is how we are investing the rider. And it is both probably going directly to the rider and, to your point, also trying to go directly to the Sun-Times, the Tribune, papers, et cetera. So I think it's an area for growth that we definitely need to move into and need to start thinking about and can start thinking about more. And I know, Kat, you've been working with media for a long time and have some strategies that you implore.
Agreed. And I think one of the things that we need to do moving forward is not just rely on individual channels. We do need a multi-pronged approach to putting this information out. Because while we do make our efforts to put out press releases and pitch stories to the media, they don't always have the bandwidth to pick up on the more positive news. So that's why we do make effort to put out content on our social media channels, creating videos, graphics, anything that'll capture our riders' attention. But I think we also need to, you know, continue to work together and find ways to, you know, do larger campaigns around certain topics, more themed approaches addressing this, and, you know, leverage some of these smaller channels that we in the past haven't always leveraged. Ollie's team has done a tremendous job in being strategic in their use of the reader emails, you know, notifying them about the special events, and those have had great open rates, which is something we'll look at to see how many people are actually reading it and engaging it. I think if we just put our heads together and come up with more strategic plans for some of these larger announcements, that message will get out there better to our riders.
Right. You know, it's just always a concern, more so again for the public safety, because there's so much information out there. You just don't know who to believe. Yeah, and I'm always concerned about it, but thank you.
I think if we just, you know, also leveraging the information that we do have in our performance metrics dashboard, circling back, we do our best to point people back to that. This is where that information is coming from, and showing them that information that's out there. That's awesome.
Are we looking at, first of all, representation? And I really appreciate the part where you said, Molly, that one size doesn't fit all because we have a very diverse audience. Is there any effort in place to identify within that diversity of customers, groups, persona type profiles of folks that we can be more strategic about, that have specific concerns that are different from whatever is the average? I'm thinking folks who come, again, with issues around safety, with issues around issues that happen in the west and the south sides that may not be happening in the north side of Chicago. The folks who have left CTA, and are not coming back for whatever reason. Are we segmenting and directing strategies to those specific groups? And if so, how are we doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can cover that one.
Yeah.
So Carrie Bader, VP Strategy and Innovation. A couple of years ago, CTA worked with an outside partner to conduct a pretty robust segmentation analysis based on benchmark car rides. And that really digs into users by the way that they use our system. So riders that are often riding frequently during peak hours on rail, or peak hours transferring bus to rail. And then where some of the more encouraging data lately is off-peak hours and frequent riders on bus and bus to rail. That data informs how they're leveraging the system and which modes. But then we also want to leverage our qualitative data to learn more about their experiences on those modes. And so within our market research division, we're doing our biannual surveys as well as these pulse surveys to try to disaggregate to the extent that we can, what are those experiences? And you used a word that I think my team uses a lot, personas. I think we're trying to move towards a world where we have so much information, it's often overwhelming and really hard to understand with 40 pages of data on what's happened in the last month, where we should be prioritizing our actions. And so we're working towards sort of updating on this quarterly basis, as Molly said, a more simplistic understanding of those personas so we can prioritize the way that we engage with our customers and the sort of qualitative information they're giving us accordingly. Like I said, a few of the segments that are really popping are off-peak riders on bus and rail that are still very frequent. And those are riders that we know depend on CTA to get to work and depend on CTA for childcare, healthcare, family support. We also know that those riders often use the 7-day pass. And so we're trying to look at what we know about the products that they're using, where they're riding, to come to a more holistic understanding of the policies that we should be pursuing in terms of more support for those riders, innovations within the system. I think, it's going to take time, and we're setting it up to be pretty fluid because, as we've seen since COVID, the way that people use the system is changing, and is changing pretty rapidly, and we're setting ourselves up to be responsive in that way.
We have access to the data. I'm thinking, and how you all think in transit terms all the time, like etc. That's great. But I'm thinking more around demographics, like gender, race, income, neighborhood. Do we have access to enough data that would help us fine-tune the strategy, not just based on how often they take the train, but is this an essential worker in the south side? Is this a high-income person in the north side? Is this, somebody that has left again the system? Do we have enough of that information to create demographic?
I think that's the work that's in progress, because I think right now, the way we've traditionally looked at it is via the categories that we have, which, like you said, can be frequency, mode, a little bit absent of some of that more granular information. We want to start looking at then the data we have on specific ridership lines and the socioeconomic status of those riders, and start to make some inferences about those personas, right? We're never going to have perfect information, but I think we can start to make some strategic assumptions and start to test those assumptions. To your point, to make sure that, growing ridership is obviously very important for the system, but those have to be rides that matter to the riders on the system. And so it's not only about net growth, but a quality experience for people that need to use CTA to where they're going. And that some of that work is new and is more evolving in terms of trying to meld different data sets that have traditionally been relatively isolated.
And it's also around the issue of people feeling seen by CTA, not just seen as one number or one, rider. But it makes a difference, as you all know, when you see a message, a graphic that speaks to your language or the way you communicate or your community, right, in a more specific way. So you all know who is taking the system, and I feel that my persona or my identity is being recognized, as well as my issue, right? So I think as we try to be better at communications, the more the voice of CTA sounds like you're speaking to me, not to number, I think the more we're gonna get traction. And on that regard, last question is around responsiveness. I saw you track a lot of numbers here. I'm curious as to, do we track how we respond to people with concerns in social media or in the chat box or in other ways? And I'm thinking around the experience of when you have an issue, you communicate the issue, but then there's a silence, right? And how that can damage, the perception. How do we track responsiveness of our communications team, our systems in place towards people with concerns and also with positive, experiences?
Yeah, it's an area that we're looking to grow into, and we know that we need to. That's why we launched the chatbot, because we knew, and what we heard from our customers is there was a form of one-way communication. They would communicate issues to us, and we didn't always have the best mechanisms to respond. And so through the chatbot, we are, it doesn't have the response feature yet, but it does have feedback to our teams who then are able to go and address the issue. And the evolution of the chatbot, and as we continue to look at our customer service and customer relationship management, it is moving into that area of how do we respond. So we get a complaint from Molly, we're able to respond to Molly to say, hey, you told me, you told CTA that this rail station was dirty, we've addressed it. That's really the long-term strategy and where we want to start to move to. And I would say right now, it is an area that for growth for us and something that we're looking to improve upon.
Let me make an additional point to that. I think part of what you're hearing from Molly is we've expanded the ways in which we're giving customers the ability to give us feedback. Our traditional way of giving feedback was to contact the customer service line. There is a process in place about responding to those complaints when they come in. They are monitored. There's a goal of how quickly we get back to them. There's a way in which we track who is, so forth. That's now being expanded with a much broader level of engagement, and we need to build out the infrastructure to support that as well. But I think, to your point, absolutely, a part of getting our customers to trust us is letting them know that we responded to the things that they cared about. And as we take advantage, start to leverage these additional tools that we have in place, like the chatbot and other things, or the QR code that we're talking about, a component baked that strategy, which is part of what we're doing, will be feedback that will let customers know that if you tell me that there's a problem, this is how that issue got resolved. You may not have seen it get resolved, but this is how it is. In some cases, we already know from our experience even with the chatbot, there are situations where the response to the complaint happens in almost real time. And people actually notice the fact that there's an announcement that gets made or there's something that CJ does that they connect to the fact that they made a complaint about that issue. That's like the most ideal level of responsiveness, where literally it's almost if you talk to me and then I immediately picked up the phone and said, take care of this. We're obviously not going to be able to do that in all situations, but I think that's the goal that we want to get to, where these feedback loops are creating a two-way communication to our customers, as well as, to your point, which I agree with, we have to speak to the customer in a way that they feel that they're being heard. And that means that CTA historically took a more generic approach to our communication strategy. CTA as an entity spoke to our customers as an entity. But as we sit here and divide up that customer base and get into the demographic that you're talking about, along with that have to come an appropriate messaging strategy that speaks to that. You look in the private sector, they're doing that all the time. That to me is part of the overall strategy, how we continue to grow our ridership and get CTA back. to where we are. We can no longer rely on the fact that people will ride CTA just because it's the way that they go to and from work. That was the pre-pandemic approach, which Molly was referring to. We now recognize that we have to compete for those rides every single day. And those choice trips are much more harder to get than the trips that were sort of like, I can't pay for parking and therefore I only have only option I have is take CTA. We know that the transit-dependent ridership will always be there because of the very nature of what they do. We also know that we need to be responsive to them and let them know that we care about them just as much as I care about choice riders who are using our system and making sure that their needs are being addressed as well. One of the things that I did that Molly is now in charge of was really expand our marketing research side of our house. The people who do surveys and do the focus groups and other things, because I didn't feel, particularly coming out of the pandemic, that we had enough information about our customers, many of which are the things that you're mentioning right now. They are building that out now. They've got additional resources to support that. We're doing way more surveys than we ever did before in our history. And I think as we build up that database, we will be able to get much more granular in the strategies that we're applying that ultimately will meet the needs that we're trying to address going forward. That is part of the multi-pronged strategy along with the fares and everything else that we believe will drive our ridership back to where it was at a pre-pandemic level.
Thanks. I appreciate everyone's patience. I know we've gone well over our scheduled time picks. So thank you to everyone. I know it impacts us all, with myself. So right there with you. I'll make my comments brief. Really wanted to highlight the profile component that you were talking about. I would envision that we will highlight those riders who throughout the pandemic made the system strong. So I just really want to emphasize that and prioritizing, do a deep dive into who those riders were, how often, where, how, and how we can service those riders even more. The second point is that we've, very much through President Carter's messaging and conversations across all of our board meetings, we've talked about a world-class system, right? And so I hear a lot of these pieces of communications and safety and riders and all of these pieces really just going back to what we've talked about, which is really creating a strategic plan for the CTA. So I feel like that strategic plan will really guide communications and safety and ridership and all the different pieces that make up a world-class system. So again, just really want to encourage and echo our work around developing a really structured, cleared, and I'm a planner, so I very much believe in these plans, that we will have a strategic plan in place. I think it's timely. We kind of covered a lot of the immediate needs of the pandemic very well into the post-pandemic period. So how do we really think through that, restructure, refocus, and think through strategically and logically, how do we move our different pieces forward together?
I'm glad you mentioned that because we are working on a strategic plan that is going to exactly to those points. Yeah, I recognize as well that we need to have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan that's sort of laying out the roadmap for how we're going to do all of this. And that actually also falls under Molly as part of the work that her team is doing that we'll be presenting to the board in the future.
We would love to be part of that plan. So
absolutely.
Are there any other questions as it relates to the president's report? Director Lee?
None. Just thank you for the overview, and glad that we're trying to be more responsive and connect with our customers, but looking forward to continued updates. Thanks.
Director Eady?
No, I just want to say I was very happy to hear that customer service and that better experience was the focus, because that's what it has to be when we're talking about ridership and increasing it. And I think as long as we can kind of keep that as the target and the central focus, I think we're moving in the right direction. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
And that concludes my report.
all right, well, thank you, President Carter. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on May 8th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve?
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Ja, that we approve the meeting minutes of May 8th, 2024. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Eady,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Requejo.
Yes.
The minutes are approved. Motion passes.
The next order of business is executive session. It is my understanding that we have an executive session, Brad.
Yes, Director Jakes, the board will move into closed session today pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C, subsections 2, 11, and 21.
I will now entertain a motion to recess into executive session, for reasons stated by council.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that we move into executive session. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Eady,
Yeah.
Director Ortiz, Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Requejo,
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
All right. In a motion to return to open session.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Job, that the board return to open session. Take a,
Director Lee.
Director Lee. Director Job is, Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
You said yeah.
Okay. Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
The motion passes.
We will now address board agenda item 9. Brad?
Yes, Director Jakes. Actually, that's 8A. Agenda item is.
Okay, I'm sorry. And agenda item 8A.
Thank you. In item 8A, the board reviewed the closed session meeting minutes for May 8th, 2024.
Now, please have a motion to approve the closed session minutes for May 8th, 2024.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the closed session minutes, meeting minutes for May 8th, 2024 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Abstain.
The motion passes.
We will now address agenda item 8B.
In agenda item 8, we will review the recommendation by council to approve an ordinance ratifying a memorandum of agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union, Locals 241 and Local 308.
Now, please have a motion to ratify the memorandum of agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union Locals 241 and 308.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz and seconded by Director Lee that the memorandum of agreement with the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 241 and 308 be approved. We will take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We will now address agenda item 8C.
With respect to board item 8C, the board reviewed the recommendation by council to approve a settlement in the matter of MC Johnson versus Chicago Transit Authority and James Brown, pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County, case number 2023 L000448 in the amount of $3 million.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve a settlement in the matter of MC Johnson versus the Chicago Transit Authority and James Brown, pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County, case number 2023 L as in Larry 000448 in the amount of $3 million.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz and seconded by Director Lee that the settlement in the matter of MC Johnson versus the Chicago Transit Authority and James Brown be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Before I move on, Ellen, ASL interpreter, do you need me to repeat the case number? I know I was rolling through it pretty fast. Wait, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Ellen, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you so much for offering. We do have the case number on the agenda, so I got it, but thank you so much.
Okay. All right. We will now address board agenda item 8D.
Director Jakes, with respect to board agenda item 8, the board reviewed the recommendation by council to approve a settlement in the matter of Aaron Lazima Ruiz and Inet Lazema versus Chicago Transit Authority, pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County, case number 2022 L002337 in the amount of $900,000.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve a settlement in the matter of Aaron Lizama Ruiz and Vianet Lizama versus Chicago Transit Authority, pending in the Circuit Court of Cook County, case number 2022 L002337, the amount of $900,000.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee, that the settlement in the matter of Aaron Lizama Ruiz and Vianet Lizama versus the Chicago Transit Authority be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget, which will be presented by yours truly. The committee met earlier this morning and approved the May 8th, 2024 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. Committee reviewed 9 ordinances. Number 1, review of an ordinance amending Ordinance 023-131, approving the fiscal years 2024 to 2028 capital improvement program. Number 2, review of an ordinance authorizing amendments to electricity contracts with Denergy Energy Services and MP2 Energy to extend the contracts for 1 year. Number 3 is review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Romaine Empire, Inc., Farmer's Fridge, to install, operate, and maintain refrigerated food vending machines at designated rail stations. 4, review of an ordinance authorizing a license agreement with Fuse Technology to install, operate, and maintain mobile charging vending machines at designated rail stations. 5, a review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with RTA, Metra, and PACE for the Regional Day Pass Pilot Program. Pardon me. 6, review of an ordinance establishing the authorities Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program goal for federal fiscal years 2025 through 2027. 7, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of primary and excess property insurance coverage for policy year 2024 and 2025. 8, review of an ordinance approving the name of the new rail station on the Green Line at Damon Avenue. 9, review of an ordinance authorizing amendments to the authority's Public Transportation Agency rail and bus safety plans. Committee also reviewed 8 contracts. The committee placed the 9 ordinances and 8 of the contracts on the omnibus. Committee approved and recommended for board approval 9 ordinances and the 8 contracts, and that is the conclusion of the report on finance, audit, and budget. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz, seconded by Director Lee to approve the omnibus. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business, is there a motion to approve delaying the construction report until our next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved to defer the construction report to the next meeting of the Chicago Transit Board. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Requejo?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our final order of business is new business. Georgette, is there any new business?
Director Jakes, there is no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the Chicago Transit Board meeting of June 25th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Ortiz and seconded by Director Lee that the meeting be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Requejo?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Eady?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone.
Thank you.